Welcome to Silverstone for race 2 of the weekend for the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. The cars making their way round onto the grid. We've already had one race today, such is the nature of the timetable. It was a fairly blustery, cool race early on, and it was won in impressive fashion by Dan Ticktum. He had to work very hard for it because he bogged down a little bit off the line. He battled his way round on the outside line at the first corner to get third place back. He got second round the outside at Luffield, and he got the lead with a really bold pass diving down towards Stoke Corner. But for this race, which is based on a standalone qualifying session, it is a driver's best time out of Q2. Fabio Scherer takes his first pole position. Not just his first pole position in Formula 3, his first pole position in anything. And Fabio Scherer for Motor Park starting then at the front of the grid with Mick Schumacher for company, Juri Vips lining up third, then in Ahmed, Jonathan Aberdeen fifth, and Sasha Fenestra, who led the bulk of the opening race, sixth on the grid. At the very back is Petru Florescu, the cars working their way round to slot into position on that one-by-one staggered grid. Pole position on the outside line. It's the full Grand Prix circuit in use at Silverstone this weekend. And there you see the teams having made their way from the support race pits all the way around into the wing pits and then being released again to come round onto the grid. So we're a few minutes away yet from the start of the formation lap, which is in about 17 minutes' time. So things slightly delayed on track because of an interruption to the previous qualifying session for the FIA World Endurance Championship. And the cars will make their way, as I say, onto the grid. Now you're looking there at the Prema Theodore Racing Squad, which had its dramas tyre-wise in the first race because 3 of the 5 all had left rear deflations. The first one was Mick Schumacher. Later, Guan Yu Zhou lost third place. And as soon as we had him into the pit lane, then Ralph Aron's left rear went down and he spun into the gravel at Stoke Corner and brought out a full course yellow briefly. So quite what was causing it, the team hasn't yet found safe. But you can assure yourselves that Hankook and the team will have been looking hard at the data to try and work out what was going on, whether it was a pressure problem or whether the drivers were using too much curb or whether there was something on the road causing all of this. But it was only Prema that had the problem, none of the other teams. There is Dan Ticktum's Red Bull liveried car nosing its way down the pit lane. He drives for Motor Park, and for this race, the new championship leader is going to start on the outside of the 4th row. Now, he came here 1 point behind Marcus Armstrong in the title race. He is now 16 points ahead in the championship battle. Dan Ticktum ahead of Marcus Armstrong, with then Ralph Aron third, 4th being Guan Yu Zhou, 5th Inam Ahmed, and Juri Vips 6th. The cars you can see released now to make their way round onto the grid. 33 minutes plus 1 lap, the regular duration for rounds of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. And the earlier race proved to have this interesting battle between Sasha Fenestra, who led the bulk of it, having started on pole position, and Dan Ticktum, who chipped his way further and further up the order, then started to make the push for the race lead. And what he didn't do was attack straight away. He hung back, he waited, he looked after the tyres, and eventually was able to make that move for a race win. Let's have a look back at race 1 just to piece it all together, because it was Sasha Fenestra who made a good start from pole position and was the leader down towards the first corner, with Guan Yu Zhou dropping ahead of Dan Ticktum, who very nearly lost his third place to his teammate Jonathan Aberdeen. He got third place coming through Farm, out wide Robert Schwarzman. That was the end of the move for second place. You haven't seen all of it there, but it was a really brave effort. Dan Ticktum right the way around the outside to get second. Marcus Armstrong equally brave to go around the outside of Alex Palou going through Cops Corner. That put him 1 place further up the pecking order. Ralph Aron, though, having a really grim weekend. Artem Petrov was a retirement early on, his Van Amersfoort racing car limping into the pit lane. And Mick Schumacher, with the tyre going down, battled his way back to the pit lane and into retirement as he was struggling. So Dan Ticktum got himself up onto the back of Sasha Fenestra for the race lead. He had a look coming down towards Stoke Corner, but Fenestra was able to fend him off. They turned then out of Stoke, down through Vale. And a couple of laps later, Ticktum left it till the very last moment and charged up the inside line. Fenestra couldn't cut across. He was hung out to dry. Both ran wide, Ticktum as well, of course, but that was enough to put him into the race lead. Fenestra had a look at the end of Vale to try to go back through, but it just would not happen for him. And so, into the race lead, Dan Ticktum, Motor Park, very happy indeed. Ralph Aron's tyre down. Into the gravel he went. Briefly, that brought out the full course yellow, but the green flag, we were racing once more. And Inam Ahmed bagged third. Jonathan Aberdeen ran wide, losing a place to Juri Vips, launching himself over the curb and having been on target for a maiden podium, in the end he fell back into 5th place, number 23 for South Africa. So Dan Ticktum has now won more races than anybody else. That was win number 4, and with it, the lead in the championship. Dan Ticktum also taking the fastest lap of race 1, so in very good form coming into race 2. Trouble is now, though, he's got a bit of work to do, only 8th on the grid. The qualifying session that determined this grid was held right at the very end of yesterday. The cars were out on track at probably the wrong side of 6 o'clock yesterday evening, and it means, therefore, that the track conditions were slightly different, slightly cooler, and it's a more jumbled grid. Now the drivers making their way down through the pit lane, getting another opportunity at getting some warmth into the tyres before the pit lane closes. It opens for 5 minutes, so they've got another lap they can squeeze out of this before they slot into place on the grid. So Fabio Scherer, the man on pole position, having claimed his first ever car racing pole position in that qualifying session. He was only 10th in the first race this morning, but in fairness to him, he has got points from that. And now, if he can make a good start, it's going to be interesting to see how he gets on. Fabio Scherer driving for Motorpart, the same team that won earlier on in the day with Dan Ticktum, the Swiss driver, who came from karting into the German Formula 4 Championship, and also, in fact, raced in the UAE F4 Series. Fabio Scherer will start on pole position. Mick Schumacher, son, of course, of Michael Schumacher, will line up with him at the front of the grid. And Mick had his first Formula 3 win at Spa in the most recent event in the championship. Number 3 just heading down the pit lane there, the Motorpart car of Sebastian Fernandez. And the grid now starting to take shape. We've had 10 different winners already this season, and as far as the championship is concerned, Dan Ticktum now ensconced at the lead, getting ready for this second race of the weekend. Silverstone's full Grand Prix circuit is the one in use this weekend, 5.9 kilometres. FIA Formula 3 running with the FIA World Endurance Championship and the European Le Mans Series, so that's why the timetable is slightly different, with these 2 races really crammed in at the start of Saturday because of the need to have a 4-hour sports car race after lunch this afternoon. Race 3 comes up tomorrow morning, and then we are into Misano for the next round of the championship in a couple of weeks' time. So the cars making their way now onto the grid. Dan Ticktum looking for another victory. Can he squeeze one out from 8th on the grid? That's going to be a tall ask, I suspect. Tomorrow morning's race, incidentally, will start at just 10:05. So again, it's an early start for the teams, but we shall see who comes out on top in this race before we worry about tomorrow. Base that grid on the second qualifying time that the drivers set from this session. So the grid is formed, we're ready to go. There, looking down upon the grid, is number 7, Ralph Aaron, who was in strife with a deflated tyre in the earlier race this morning, and he desperately needs points because, having been the championship leader at Spa, he is now 3rd and he's losing touch. He's got 141.5 points relative to the 178 of Dan Ticktum. Why half points? Because the Pau Grand Prix, race 3, which ironically was the one that Ralph Aaron won, his first victory of the season, didn't go the full distance. The rain came, accidents happened, the race was stopped, and we hadn't got to 75%, so it wasn't restarted, and half points rewarded. So it was a win, great, but Ralph Aaron, as the season has gone on, is probably ruining those points that weren't awarded. Into position, everybody slots. If you're a Formula 3 fan, you'll know the score. They're all Dallara chassis, they're all on Hankook tyres. There's this engine battle between Mercedes and Volkswagen, and Prema Theodore Racing, they're getting a spare nose cone ready just in case. So the cars just about in position. At the very back of the grid, Petru Florescu. Others that struggled in the qualifying session, including Jayan Daruvala, the Indian driver, who will line up on the 18th rank on the grid. There, number 1 is Guan Yu Zhou. Second event in a row he's had a puncture, because he struggled at Spa with a punctured tyre as well. Some damage sustained across the 3 races. So Guan Yu Zhou starting 9th on the grid here. He is a man that's had a win. He is 4th in the championship, but retired because of that punctured tyre from race 1 earlier on today. So Guan Yu Zhou desperately needs points, desperately needs a good result out of this, as the SMP Racing colours grace the grid, courtesy of Robert Schwarzman SMP Racing here for sports cars, but also Formula 3. Robert Schwartzman, run by Prema Theodore Racing. Different colour scheme from the other Prema Theodore cars, but the same squad running him. So Guan Yu Zhou we've looked at, lining up 9th on the grid, 8th with work to do. The championship leader, Dan Ticktum, the British driver, the Red Bull-backed youngster, the reigning BRDC McLaren Autosport Young Driver of the Year award winner. And also, as you see there, just briefly on the side of the car, part of the British Racing Drivers Club's Superstars initiative, run by touring car champion Tim Harvey to promote young British talent. And in Dan Ticktum, a good find. And with his 4 wins, the championship lead, is he going to be this year's champion? Well, we've got a lot of races to flow under the bridge yet before you can start thinking about that. But Dan Ticktum now has an advantage in the championship over this man, Marcus Armstrong. He lines up 7th in his Prema Theodore car, 2nd in the championship. He's only had the 1 win, but the Kiwi has been busy banking points at every opportunity. So he's been a consistent scorer. And Marcus Armstrong is still there in contention. He will line up on the 4th row of the grid, 7th. 6th is where you find Sasha Fenestra, who rather quirkily, when he got out of the car at the end of race 1, didn't seem all that dismayed about not having won, but in the press conference was decidedly grumpy about it. So Sasha Fenestra, maybe he had time to think about what might have been, but Sasha Fenestra for Carlin, Trevor Carlin's squad, they're lining up for 6th on the grid. There's another slight Silverstone link in a sense, because Trevor Carlin himself, a member of the British Racing Drivers Club, and Sasha Fenestra, the reigning Formula Renault Euro Cup champion, won at the start of the season the 2nd of the 3 races at Pau, but really up until this weekend hasn't had the same pace, hasn't had that same form. He lines up 6th. 5th is where you find Jonathan Aberdeen, who in terms of qualifying pace at least has had his best weekend thus far. The South African, perhaps it's all part of getting more experience, getting more competitive the more seat time he gets, but Jonathan Aberdeen lining up 5th on the grid. And then ahead of him is Inam Ahmed, the reigning British F3 champion, the BRDC F3 series for the non-FIA spec cars. There is Jonathan Aberdeen. It's another of those Motopark cars run by Timo Rupfkarl's team. And the South African learning about this sort of slicks and wing single-seater, learning also about lots of new circuits, coming across to do his racing in this part of the world this season. It's been a steep learning curve, but after a couple of years of German F4, he knows some circuits, but here is a completely new one to him. And Jonathan Aberdeen did do a pretty decent job, in fairness, in that first race, up until the full course yellow, when he was a bit slow on his marks, lost out to Inam Ahmed, tried to defend before he lost another place, and launched himself over the curb and fell from 3rd to 5th. So, Aberdeen on the fight back here. High-Tech Bullfrog GP having a much better season this year than last, and there is the car of another of the BRDC superstars, Inam Ahmed, the reigning British F3 champion. Came from F4 into F3 in the UK, and a number of people weren't quite so sure how he was going to do this year, stepping up into the international championship, but actually he was the first double winner. So fair play to Inam Ahmed. He has looked strong this year. He won 2 of 3 at Hungary, going back to the 2nd weekend in the championship. And Inam Ahmed here, starting 4th on the grid, could be another one to make some progress. Now, 3rd on the grid is another of the winners out of that perfect 10 that we've had this year, Yuri Vips, number 44. He's another of the Motopark contingent, and Yuri Vips will be very, very keen indeed to make a decent start here to try and split Fabio Scherer and Mick Schumacher from the front of the grid. Yuri Vips, the Estonian, looked after, as is Ralph Aron, the other Estonian on the grid, by Marco Asma. You can just see to the left of the car there, Marco, former British Formula 3 champion. And Marco Asma, who's kind of become the go-to driver coach for any Estonian, is splitting his time between the two on this grid. 2nd on the grid is a name that's had great success and great results at Silverstone in the past. It is the name Schumacher, but this is Mick in his 2nd year of Formula 3. He won for the first time at Spa in the most recent weekend in the championship. He's 2nd on the grid. It was a punctured tyre that did for him in the earlier race, but Mick Schumacher certainly has proved now that he's got the speed. He's had a pole position at Spa, he's had a win at Spa, albeit for separate races, different races, but Mick Schumacher could be a potential winner of this. He's on the inside line, but it's not the grippier line, it's not the racing line. That's claimed, of course, by the pole car, and Fabio Scherer, for the first time in his career in anything, is on pole position. He went well at Pau, but then he had an accident. He bounced back to an extent at Spa and had a 2nd place. but then had a spin in the third race. So he's had up and down days. Let's see whether this is going to be an up. Fabio Scherer in the points in race 1, where he finished in 10th place, and he's on pole position, ready to lead the cars around as we get set for round 17 of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. The teams now making their way back into the pit lane. There's pretty much little they can do unless the car needs a nose cone change or a little bit of repair work under a safety car, where you'll lose less time. But really, as we saw in the first race, if you have a puncture, you're as good as a retirement, because you'll drop off the lead lap, and after that you're out of the point. So why take life out of the tyres? It's not a case of the driver just giving up, but really there is no point circulating when the tyres are going to be hurt by driving round and round and round, and you're not going to score any points. The only benefit is if you are a real rookie and you want the seat time. So, at the 1 minute board, engines will fire up and then the cars will be released for the final formation lap before the 17th round of the championship. There is Misano's 3 races, 3 at the Nürburgring, then at the Red Bull Ring, and the championship showdown at Hockenheim still to come. So, a lot of racing still to go in the championship with this triple header format, which is so enjoyed by the drivers and the teams to maximise the track time. You get 2 free practice sessions, 2 qualifyings and 3 races. There's a lot of track time for the drivers. And there the grid, stretching all the way back to the exit of Club Corner, where Petru Florescu will be at the back with Amaya Vardianathan to line up with him, just behind the cars of Sophia Flörsch and Kevin Sori-Andres. Mick Schumacher with his sights focused now on the first corner at Abbey. Remember that on the Grand Prix circuit here, using the wing, Copse Corner is not the first. It is Abbey that is the right-hand first corner, so you flick right at Abbey, left at Farm, then up towards Village, the slow, tight right-hander, then into the loop, then into Aintree. Speed builds all the way down the Wellington Straight, and that gets you to the end of the first sector, down towards Brooklands, through Luffield, through Copse. Speed building all the time. Mangots, Beckett's, onto the Hanger Straight, and as you exit Chapel Curve onto the Hanger Straight, you get to the end of the second sector, giving you Hanger Straight, Stowe, Vale, and Club Corner before the end of the lap. The cars then, all good to go. And as the Prema engineers get themselves ready to look after the fleet of 5. So the engines all fired up. The race will have 33 minutes plus the regulation lap on at the end, which is the normal format, changed from being purely a timed race a few years ago, so that the drivers were always aware of when the last lap would be. The 15-second board is shown. The FIA Championship officials on the gantry as well, controlling all of this, and the lights will go to green in a moment to release the cars on this warming-up lap. The grid is complete. Nobody had any damage, thankfully, in the first race, because there's been a very limited amount of repair time. There is the green flag, and the cars now release. The green lights come on. Everybody accelerates away. So we have the FIA Formula 3 European Championship, second race of the weekend. The cars released now. Number 4 is Mick Schumacher. Can he make a demon start and find a way past Fabio Scherer? Even if Scherer gets the lead, can the Swiss driver maintain that advantage all the way through the race? Because the pressure is certainly going to be immense, especially on a guy that's never had a Formula 3 win before. How is he going to cope with that? Well, we'll find out very shortly, because as the cars now weave their way down towards Brooklyn, see Sasha Fenestra has his yellow car in the body of the field. Fenestra always one to watch, and he's looked good around here, the reigning Formula Renault Euro Cup champion. In front of the BRDC clubhouse, the cars come out of Brooklands, up now through Luffield. There, another of the race winners you saw in the background, the pink car, that of Jay Deruvela. It runs in Force India colours. Now, he's a Force India junior. Whether that is a good or a bad thing, given the F1 team's travails, remains to be seen. But fingers crossed that will stay on the grid. And now the cars come into the right-hander of Copse Corner. For so many years, the old pit straight, now just a straight. The National Pit Straight down towards Copse. Of course, this in the second half of the lap now. Then up towards the Beckett's S's, the cars wriggle, and then onto the Hanger Straight. Conditions today have not really changed for this from the first race. It's still quite cloudy overhead, very overcast. It's a bit chilly. It's quite breezy, all of which will perhaps help the drivers on the used tyres, because they're coping with cooler conditions. It certainly will help the engines, because they are better to operate in a cooler temperature. The fastest lap of the first race, set by Dan Ticktum, was a 1:51.8, not as good as Lando Norris's lap record from last season, on his way to winning the championship, but you don't get a point for that anyway. There's only pride at stake. But as the cars now accelerate their way out of the club, you can see the way the drivers are trying to urge a bit of temperature through the rubber by squirming away, trying to get the cars a little bit sideways and force some temperature into the tyres. So up to the grid they will come. Fabio Scherer at the front of the field. The second on the grid, it is Mick Schumacher on that inside line. And then to line up third, as you look at Schumacher, is Juri Vips, and then fourth is Inar Mahmed. So it's Motor Park, Prema, Motor Park, High-Tech Bullfrog, then Motor Park, then Carlin. And it is Jonathan Aberdeen and Sasha Fennerstra completing that top six. As soon as the last few cars are in place, then we'll be good to go. There, number 13 is the pole car, Fabio Scherer. First time he's been on pole position in anything. How is he going to adapt? How is he going to get away? We're about to find out as the green flag is shown at the rear of the grid. The lights will go red, engine notes rise. The best start is made by Schumacher, I reckon, who bolts ahead of Fabio Scherer. Yes, he does, on the way down towards Abbey for the first time. Schumacher leads. Scherer second, but it might even be third as Juri Vips gets up the inside of them as they go through the right-hander of Abbey. Having to defend, though, from Inar Mahmed is Juri Vips. That's going to give a free ride up the inside line to Scherer as the cars go towards Village for the first time in 33 minutes of racing. Do they all get round the tight right safely? They do, but Schumacher leads at Silverstone as he comes now out of Village. 1 or 2 getting forced out wide over the rumble strip at the loop through entry. Schumacher is leading. Scherer is second, or is he? Because Juri Vips is on the attack, and there's another one that's run way out wide, lower down the order. That looked as though it was Sebastian Fernandez's car. Jonathan Aberdeen, it is in third. Fourth is Vips. Inar Mahmed was fifth as they got to the end of the first sector, and he's about to lose another place, I think, is Inar Mahmed, because Marcus Armstrong tries to go round the outside of him. Here they come then in midfield, out of Luffield, down towards Woodcote, but Schumacher it is leading Scherer in second place. Vips is third, so Mick Schumacher won at Spa in the third race. He leads race 2 at Silverstone as Fennerstra there goes on the inside line to try to attack Guan Yu Zhou going down towards Copse Corner, can't do it. Ferdinand Habsburg, 62 for Carlin, forces Sebastian Fernandez out wide at Copse Corner, and they're not the only ones to go wide. There was another one running out of road in the background, but Schumacher is away and gone now. Through they turn, out of the Beckett's S's once more. They're on the hanger straight, and the 3, 4, 5 leading cars starting to do their best to get away, but Schumacher is the one who's absolutely charged clear. He's already got about 3 or 4 lengths advantage over the opposition as they come into the braking zone for Stoke Corner. Challenge being made by Ralph Aaron there on the inside of Robert Schwarzman. Is he going to be able to go through? He's not. Schwarzman, the Russian driver, keeps the Estonian at bay. Deruvula runs way out wide in the background, and he's not the only one. As there, Palou has a look at the inside of Fennerstra. The leaders come through then at the end of lap 1 of the race. And the race leader is Mick Schumacher. Fabio Scherer is second. Third is Vips. Fourth is Aberdeen. Fifth, Armstrong. Ahmed is 6th, 7th is Zhou, 8th is Fennerstra, 9th is Palou, then 10th I should say, Schwarzman, 11th is Aaron, and Dan Ticktum is only in 12th place. Now, Ticktum, in other words, and there he is, behind Ralph Aaron, has gone backwards, not forwards off the grid. He lined up on the outside of the 4th row of the grid, and he has not made a good start at all. So Ticktum, in the first few corners, has lost ground. And all of a sudden, the championship leader is out at the point, and his rival, Marcus Armstrong, is 5th. This is going to be quite an intriguing subplot for the rest of the race. As there, look, Ralph Aaron, who is determined not to let Ticktum by because he needs points as well. Ralph Aaron, and he's not in the top 10 either yet. So you've got the two of them, pointless, coming through Luffield. If Marcus Armstrong can gain another couple of places over the course of 30 minutes and a lap, which is what we've got left, that might stand him in good stead. And contact on the opening lap there, look. Who does that punt off the road? I may have Janathan, I'm afraid, off the track. And that may have been with an assist from Charles Leon, the Macanese driver, new to High-Tech Bullfrog this weekend. He was in that kind of area. So the race leader's currently on lap number 2, and Marcus Armstrong has done the absolute best of anybody in the first sector to try to get himself onto the tail now of Jonathan Aberdeen, as there is Habsburg getting onto Hanger Straight. The race leader coming now down into the right-hander of Stowe. Dan Ticktum still chipping away to get himself onto the back of Aaron, who wants to get himself onto the back of Schwarzman. Through they come once more. There is Mick Schumacher. Vaidyanathan did rejoin, incidentally, after that skirmish at the end of the previous lap, but unfortunately he's quite a long way adrift. Schumacher through then. 2 laps in the book. He's just done the fastest lap thus far, the only flying lap we've had, but he's done it quicker than anybody else as he leads from Fabio Scherer already by 1.7 seconds, and Scherer locks up there. Going into Village, that gives Juri Vips a chance to get right onto his tail. Behind them in 4th place is Aberdeen, so it's Motorpark 2, 3, 4, but it's Prema 1 and 5 now. Marcus Armstrong is 5th at the expense of Inam Ahmed. And Armstrong now sensing a golden opportunity to claw back some of that lost ground in the championship against Dan Ticktum as they come down Wellington Straight. Vips jinks out, tries to distract Fabio Scherer, but look at the way that Schumacher is going. This is an impressive run with only 2 laps and a bit in the book. He is well clear now. Through they come with the 2nd place driver being Fabio Scherer, 3rd Juri Vips, out of Woodcote, past the Heritage pits, National pit straight, and now into Copse Corner. See how much of the curb the drivers take, trying to maximise the amount of room available and then sweep through that right-hander, floor the throttle, drag the car out the other side. Onto Hanger Straight comes then Mick Schumacher as the race leader, and then behind him, with the gap at the start of this lap being 1.4 seconds, it is still Scherer, and then Vips. Aberdeen is 4th, Armstrong is 5th. Now Armstrong, given his pace this year, you would anticipate to be able to close onto Jonathan Aberdeen. There, Alex Palou keeping Robert Schwarzman at bay, 9th and 10th as Fenestra, 8th ahead of them, runs wide coming out of Stoke Corner, down through Vale. Look behind this battle pack, you can see that it's still Aaron ahead of Ticktum. Schwarzman forces his nose up the inside, this is for position, and he will go through on the inside line. Palou gets run out wide up the curb, and Robert Schwarzman has the inside line as they come now past the pits, down towards the 1st corner on the lap into Abbey, and Schwarzman goes through. But have a look at the way that Ralph Aaron has benefited from that squabbling. He's right there behind them, and he's going to make a move, I think, on the approach to Village. It's the outside at Village, it'll be the inside line for the loop. Ralph Aaron tries to get on the inside, and he can't quite do it there, but it should happen at Aintree. He's on the inside, the road will come to him. Look, he's got the tighter inside line, almost contact between the two. Wide goes Palou, and Dan Ticktum buys into this. Dan Ticktum gets up the inside, tries to make a move, gets squeezed a little bit by Palou, but Ralph Aaron is ahead, and Dan Ticktum tries to go up on the inside line here, trying to follow the Estonian, but he can't do it. Palou splits the pair of them. Ralph Aaron then now up into 10th. 11th is Palou, still 12th, therefore, is Dan Ticktum, and behind him is Ben Hinchley as the cars now sprint through Woodcote. So Ticktum not only is stuck behind Palou, but he can see another of his championship rivals finally getting into the points and trying to make progress as now they work out of Copse. Ticktum again forced out wide over the curbing. Into the pit lane has come Charles Lyon, Maccanin's newcomer. So if that was because he got involved a lap ago, then there is potentially some damage after that contact with Vaidyanathan. So he's rejoined the race indeed now. So a long way back is Charles Long, but he's been into the pit lane. So we have still leading the way Mick Schumacher, and that lead is set to increase, I think, given the way that he's going at the moment, whereas behind him it is still this Scherer versus Vips fight, and Scherer is fending off his teammate. So Mick Schumacher heads towards the line, and then you've got 5 rookie drivers all queued up behind him. Impressive stuff this. Scherer, Vips, Aberdeen, Armstrong, Ahmed, all new to the championship this season. Then you've got an old stager, Guan Yu Zhou, 2 more rookies, 8th and 9th, Fenestra and Schwarzman. And there a challenge made. De Ruvela trying to get himself up past Fernandez. He goes back ahead and then goes off the road, and that's going to cost him places. He's on the bypass there, that tarmac strip of road, to try and rejoin. But Jane De Ruvela, battling with Sebastian Fernandez, runs out of road and falls back down the order as a result of all of that. So rather than being able to hang on to his place, De Ruvela falls further and further back. There is an incident involving Robert Schwarzman and Ralph Aaron on the first lap at turn 15, which is Stowe, which is under investigation. So interesting that, because both of them have survived, but there's an incident that the stewards are going to have a look at. The race director refers that to the stewards. They do judicial. Race directors look after the running of the race. They don't get involved in that at FIA Championship international permit level. here, replay of what happened to Jane Deruvula. So he's a head look of Sebastian Fernandez coming out of club. Fernandez goes to the inside. Deruvula tries to block him. Up the inside goes Fernandez, and Deruvula, with too much speed, carried into the corner, can't make the turn. The option is to go onto the runoff area, but then you're rather stuck on that bypass, if you like, on the outside of the road, like a service lane. So Jane Deruvula onto Hanger Straight with work to do now to try to get himself back into the hunt. How is Dan Tinctum doing? He's still stuck in 12th place, so after a great win in the first one, he's gone backwards off the grid and not making progress for the moment. We've got 23 minutes and change still to go, plus the regulation lap at the end. And Deruvula, again, he's wide. Amazingly, we got through the first race without any warnings about track limits. And Deruvula diving up the inside of Marino Sato there, tries to get through at the end of Vale, and then looks about switching sides and trying to get up on the inside coming into Club Corner, and he can't do that either. So his Carlin car struggling a little bit for pace at the moment. Through Abbey, where Deruvula went off a lap ago. There's the leader, Schumacher. 1.6 seconds the margin as you look at Marcus Armstrong now, the Kiwi, coming up onto the tail of Inam Ahmed. So this is 5th and 6th, and Armstrong tries the outside, largely because Inam Ahmed swings across and covers the inside line, leaving you with no opportunity. Out of Luffield, into Woodcote. Behind is Guan Yu Zhou. Behind him is Sasha Fenestrat in 8th place. There is Deruvula, ahead of Marino Sato. Behind the pair of them is Artem Petrov, as Sato again tries to get up ahead of the Indian driver, but he can't do it. Rattles over the curb and Petrov through. That was the replay of how the places changed. So plenty of battling going on all the way around the lap here. Inam Ahmed out of Beckett, still being chased hard by Marcus Armstrong. Now, given that he's done one race around here and pulled off a good move, a brave move to get past Ahmed, can he do it again, Marcus Armstrong? Getting more familiar with the circuit. Inam Ahmed has raced on this in British F3, raced on the shorter national circuit configuration in F4. Comes then now out of Stowe. Both of them running wide. But as I say, no track limit warnings thus far, and no further action in the incident such as it was between Aaron and Schwarzman. Marcus Armstrong out of club, over the timing line, and then down towards Abbey he will go. Now the last lap, Mick Schumacher's advantage dropped to 1.4 seconds because behind him, Shearer and Vips, and also, in fact, behind them, Jonathan Aberdeen, all fractionally quicker. So is Mick Schumacher now driving within himself, having built the advantage? Is he just looking after the rubber? Bearing in mind he had that tyre deflate in race 1. So push early, build a gap, and now Yuri Vips has done the absolute best in the first sector. So the Estonian driver really is hustling on to try to get himself past Fabio Shearer. Now, admittedly, that first sector comes to an end on Wellington Straight. So you get a tow, you look like a real hero. There on the inside line, look, is Sophia Flörsch trying to go ahead of Marino Sato. That is a battle for 20th place, and Sophia Flörsch actually losing out because Marino Sato is now through and ahead. Sophia Flörsch coming into Formula 3 midway through this season from F4, making that graduation, first female entrance that we've had since Tatiana Calderon a few seasons back. Now, onto Hanger Straight. There is Schumacher, who in the second sector has lost 3/10 to Fabio Shearer. So the gap is coming down, and also an incident between Charles Leong and Amaya Vaidyanathan is under investigation, causing a collision. So it was indeed Leong that we saw on the start lap getting into the back of Vaidyanathan, and the stewards are having a look at that as well to see whether anything needs to be done about it. So the leader through, so Mick Schumacher's advantage has been coming down. It's 1.2 seconds, and as he goes over the timing line, creeps up to 1.3, but Schumacher not as far ahead as he was. On that lap, both Shearer and Vips are quicker than him. Race leaders through Village, and now into the left at Aintree. Out of the loop they will cut. There is Shearer, Vips behind him. These two need to work together, because if they carry on squabbling, they're going to hold each other up, and that will enable Schumacher to just get away. Wellington Straight they come. These days, faster even than the Hanger Straight, because if you get a good run out of Aintree, you've already got that momentum. Out of Luffield, they will turn in a moment towards Woodcote Corner, which at speed is a fair old right-hander, and you've got to be brave to take all this section through Copse absolutely flat. But Schumacher leads the way. The gap, 1.4 seconds. It's crept up a little bit in the first sector. Fabio Scherer, despite that not quite so good start, hanging on to second place despite the best efforts of Yuri Vips. And then in fourth, it is Jonathan Aberdeen as they go now into the Beckett's S's. Schumacher through. Really unruffled at the moment, isn't he? Because he's been able to make that early break, he's built that gap, and there's nobody on his tail looking likely to threaten for the moment. However, we've still got 18.5 minutes plus a lap to go. Our drivers being a bit more cautious about tyres in this race, certainly at Prema, because that was the team with 3 out of 5 cars all suffering left rear punctures. Maybe that they're keeping off the curbs, it may be they've got a different tyre pressure this time around. There is Dan Ticktum, still stuck behind Alex Palou, and still therefore in 12th place. What is it in this race that's preventing the progress for Ticktum, I wonder? He doesn't look anything like as racy as he did in the earlier 33-minute plus 1 lap race, so he's got still a lot of work to do here. Is this a set-up problem? Is Ticktum struggling with another drama? Let's see. Over the timing line they go as Schumacher does another new fastest lap of the race. A 1:51.962, still some way off Lando Norris's lap record, but Schumacher it is fastest, and now the gap is very nearly 2 seconds as Ticktum closes right up onto the back of Palou. But so quickly does he arrive, he has to brake very hard and scrub off a little bit of speed going through Village there. Through the loop they will now come on the run down Wellington Straight once more. Out of Brooklands in a moment up towards Luffield. Dan Ticktum seeing Ralph Aaron get away, but actually Aaron has not really done anything about catching Schwarzman. The gap is 0.969 of a second between those two. And there, turning out of Copse Corner, is in third place Yuri Vips. Still, the Motor Park trio, second, third and fourth, doesn't have an answer to Schumacher in the lead. Run onto Hanger Straight. Mick Schumacher up front, and the gap 1.6 seconds. It has come down slightly in the second sector, so that is again where the Motor Park cars look the stronger. Fabio Scherer doing his level best to get onto terms, taking Yuri Vips with him, and then some way back in fourth place Jonathan Aberdeen. They break at the end of Vale into Club Corner, then you turn left and then the right, this long Club Corner where you've got to be very patient with the power. Stab the throttle too early, the car just pushes out wide and you lose all that momentum. Only really as you get out of the corner can you fully afford to floor the throttle over the line, and then, with the speed still building, flick through that very fast right-hander of Abbey. The new configuration of circuit introduced, what, a good 6 years or so ago now. Part of that initial design by Derek Warwick, the then president of the British Racing Drivers Club, and as a driver you can tell that it's got a driver's input because of the fact it's got some fast technical sections where you need to be brave. Dan Ticktum has gained a place. He's gone through at the expense of Alex Palou into 11 spots, so it's a place gained finally for Ticktum. It still doesn't get him into the points though, frustratingly. This has the makings of being the complete contrast of race 1, doesn't it? A big frustration in this race where he's worked for, what, 9 laps now and has only gained a spot, which still doesn't put him into the points. Ralph Aaron up the road ahead of him. The incident, by the way, between Vaidyanathan and Leong is going to be investigated post-race. And is this how Ticktum got ahead? It is. He dives up the inside going into Village. And in fairness to him, there wasn't a lot of retaliation there from Palou, was there? The door was left wide open. Race leaders through Beckett's. Schumacher, Scherer, Vips. No change in the order, but Mick Schumacher still leads the way. We've seen him in F4, we've seen him in F3. He drove also in the winter of 16 and 17 in the MRF Challenge, the 2-litre Slicks and Wing single-seater championship based in India, but with a couple of Middle Eastern events. Mick Schumacher went to the last weekend as a potential champion. In the end, it was Harry Newey racing here this weekend in sports cars, another ex-FIA Formula 3 European Championship runner that took the crown. Schumacher leading at the end of Vale, and this battle for second place is going to help him pull away, I would have thought now. Scherer versus Vips. The the last thing Timo Rumpfkarl, the team owner at Motor Park, wants to see is these two drivers get into one another. Contact must be avoided. However, it is every man for himself. You might have a teammate, as in you drive for the same team, but don't expect any help, any team orders. Out of farm they come. 14 minutes on the clock, plus the regulation lap at the end. The first race of the weekend had a very brief full course yellow, and we got 19 laps out of that. We're on lap 11 right now. So 19 is the target. Schumacher's advantage now over 2 seconds. It looks as though he might have got this under control pretty much, doesn't it? He's away and gone. Now the fastest car on the circuit last time around was Dan Ticktum, who did a 52.3, and that means that he's very nearly a full second quicker than Ralph Aaron. So now that he's been released from behind Alex Palou, so Ticktum is on an absolute mission to see if he can get onto terms with Ralph Aaron, and therefore whether he can get into the points. It might only be one, but at the end of the season that point could be absolutely crucial. Fabio Scherer versus Juri Vips. They are still squabbling as they make the running towards the Beckett Sesses this time. This, lap 11, remember. We're also getting a good sector time, a personal best down to Marino Sato, but he's a long, long way back. Whereas here, it is all about Scherer defending second place from Vips. Onto Hankler Straight they come. And an incident now for track limits involving Fernandez and Deruvela is under investigation. That's at turn 1, so that will be the moment at Abbey that we saw 3 laps ago, where Deruvela was forced out wide with Sebastian Fernandez on the inside of him. So now that comes to light, and the stewards are going to have a look at that. So I think it was just a racing incident, wasn't it? There just wasn't the room to tuck in, and Deruvela, rather than risk an incident, went onto that service road. But he has now got himself under investigation as the leader goes by onto lap 12, 2 seconds, and there Ticktum round the outside of Ralph Aaron, and they touch coming through Club. Ticktum goes out wide off the road and back on again, but he's into the points, he's into 10th place. Dan Ticktum goes through into the top 10. It did not take him long to catch Ralph Aaron, and it did not take him long to pass, so Ticktum is still all fired up. He's not lost motivation, even though he's a long way down the order in this race compared to leading, which he was in race 1. So Ticktum is ahead of Ralph Aaron. Is that going to spur the Estonian into action? But it might also be, after that little brush, that his car is not 100% anymore. Let's keep an eye to this battle as they come now onto Wellington Straight once again. Dan Ticktum then is 2.5 seconds away from Robert Schwartzman. Can he get there in 11.5 minutes? You say yes, given the pace. Now here it is. He tries the inside at the end of Vale. That's the outside for Club. There's contact, but Dan Ticktum is coming through. Make your own arrangements, Ralph Aaron. There's the nudge between the two. It was wheel to side pod, I think, initially. That was enough to unsettle both cars, but Dan Ticktum goes out wide, gains the place. Out of Woodcote Corner he comes now. Now, whether that incident gets looked at by the stewards, we will wait to see, but again, just 2 hard drivers going for the same piece of real estate. Nothing really sinister about that as Ticktum goes through then ahead of Ralph Aaron. There is Sasha Fenestra, and then behind Fenestra in 9th place is Schwartzman now, coming under attack from Dan Ticktum. For second place, Scherer versus Vips on the inside line. Fabio Scherer, Juri Vips right round the outside of it. Completion, Juri Vips goes through up into 2nd spot now. That was a brave pass, that round the outside at Stoke Corner, and not that far behind either is Jonathan Aberdeen in another of the Motor Park cars. So as they head towards the timing line now, can Juri Vips do anything about Mick Schumacher? He's finally got up past his teammate. The lead gap is 2.391 seconds. And the order is Schumacher, Vips, Scherer, Aberdeen, Ahmed and Armstrong. He's still in Ahmed ahead of Marcus Armstrong, as there, look, is the next fight between Kevin Andres and Marino Sato. Both of them in their 2nd season, taking steps forward rather than leaps forward this year. They are 19th and 20th respectively, but now the fascination is going to be to see whether Juri Vips has asked too much of his tyres in getting past Fabio Scherer, or whether he's got enough life left to go after the leader. Sato diving to the inside against Kevin Andres, but he can't find a way by there. Dan Ticktum getting away all the time now from Ralph Aaron, incidentally. Still closing onto the back of Robert Schwartzman, but I think it's more Aaron dropping away. He is having a very difficult weekend here as you look at the fight between Kevin Andres and Marino Sato. Sato to the outside line. Is he going to be able to go by here? He tries on the outside at Brooklands, diving down to the end of the Wellington Straight, but he can't find a way by there. There's no action being taken, incidentally, with the Daruvala and Fernandez investigation. And here, Kevin Andres hangs on to his place. 19th he is, 20th is Sato. They are fighting as hard as anybody out there. Sato to the inside line, down towards Copse corner. He should go through here on the inside line. It's the shorter line, it's the tighter line, way out wide over the curb. Rattles Kevin Andres, but it's not going to work for him, I don't think. It does, he stays ahead. So Kevin Andres with all that momentum. Now that might be looked at because by using all of the runoff area, he maintained momentum and therefore you could argue gained an advantage. However, he was ahead on the straight, he was ahead coming out of the corner, and Marino Sato was not given up as they go under the vehicle bridge now. Down towards Stowe, to the inside goes Kevin Andres to defend this place. Marino Sato to the outside. What he needs to do is try and get the undercut coming out of Stowe, which he tries. Kevin Andres goes wide over the curb, but Sato couldn't take advantage of that. He's going to be on the outside line for the end of Vale. That'll be the inside for Club if he can stand his ground, which he will, and he goes through. Good effort, that. He's worked very hard for the best part of a lap. Marino Sato goes through up into 19th spot at the expense of Kevin Andres now with 8 minutes to go plus a lap. Over the timing line they go. And Dan Ticktum's progress, incidentally, a 52.6 against a 53.2 of Schwartzman, so he's nearly up with him. The gap is coming down and down and down. Dan Ticktum going for 9th place. Marcus Armstrong, championship rival, is still in 6th, a second and a half away from Enam Ahmed. So Armstrong, crucially, is outscoring Ticktum. But is he going to be able to gain many more points over Ticktum? The way that Dan is going, underlining the speed once again, it might be that he can gain 1, maybe even 2 before the end of the race. So the order: Schumacher ahead of Vips, 3rd is Shearer, 4th is Aberdeen, 5th Ahmed, 6th Armstrong, 7th is Joe, 8th is Fenestrand, 9th and 10th Schwartzman and Ticktum. There is the leader. Mick Schumacher charging on over the curb, coming out of the Beckett S's onto Hanger Straight. He's on lap number 14, 7 minutes and change plus the lap remain. There is Vips behind him, and Vips has just done a personal best within the middle sector, and Vips was quicker than Schumacher in the first sector, quicker than Schumacher in the second sector. Dan Ticktum has done a personal best in the middle sector as well. So 2 drivers on a real charge. Vips going for the lead, Ticktum going for 9th. Lower down, Ferdinand Habsburg, number 62 there, closing on Nikita Troitsky, who's also been a race winner this year, another graduate of Formula Renault. Both run way wide over the curb coming out of Stowe Corner and drop now to the end of Vale. Past the pits once again goes this long train of cars headed by Mick Schumacher. The gap had been over 2 seconds, remember, a few laps back, and he's 1.8 seconds now. Last time around, 3/10 quicker was Vips than Schumacher. Ferdinand Habsburg having a frustrating season. Race winner last year, led the Macau Grand Prix, or nearly led the Macau Grand Prix. The last corner, made that dive into the wall, but he's shown pace. But this year it's been a difficult season for Ferdinand Habsburg. So we reckon it's this lap and 4 more to go for this 17th round of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship as the cars come from Brooklands to Luffield. As out of Woodcote goes Mick Schumacher through Copse now and towards the Beckett S's, where on this lap I get the feeling he's upping his pace once again. There just looks to be a bit more energy being put into the way the car is moving around the racetrack, and it means that he's just ever so slightly trying to creep away from Yuri Vips in that second place. To Hanger Straight they come once again here. On to Hanger Straight, and this time around there is about a 10th to choose between them, but Vips is quicker in that middle sector. He's got 5 minutes and a lap, he's not giving up, far from it. Still 3rd is Shearer, 4th is Aberdeen, 5th Enam Ahmed, and 6th is Marcus Armstrong as the cars now come to the end of Hanger Straight. There is Schumacher. Is this going to be a second win of the season, a second Formula 3 career win for the German driver? He's always been racing, of course, under this hugely bright spotlight. He started off as Mick Jr. and Mick Betch, his mother's maiden name, in karting. But when he came into cars, he became Mick Schumacher, and inevitably, wherever he goes, there is always a lot of attention. He deals with it for a young guy very, very well indeed. Sometimes you could think he might be a little bit surly because he tries to hide away, but inevitably if he stops for one autograph or an interview, there's thousands behind. So he tries to manage it as best he can. And Certainly when he got pole position at Spa, he was perhaps the most relaxed we've seen him for a long, long time. And a race win at Spa was also a great boost to his confidence, because he's watched other people that he's raced against come in, win races, win titles, move on. So Schumacher, a race winner in F4, but not a champion. He's been a race winner in F3 now, but not a champion. He's had a lot of bad luck as well. Down Wellington Straight goes this midfield battle. Troitsky there ahead of Habsburg still, which means they are 14th and 15th in that order. Of the Brits, the best in this is in Ahmed. Dan Tincton down in 10th, and then Ben Hinchley running in 13th position. So Dan Tincton only 6/10 back now from Robert Schwarzman, who in fairness is only 6/10 back from Sasha Fenestra. So there's a battle developing late race here for 8th, 9th and 10th. We'll try to get to that in a moment, because there is Troitsky and Habsburg. But Tincton is really becoming the man to watch again, as the leaders currently work lap 16. Fabio Scherer has got a problem. Now, what has happened to him in the middle sector? Could this be tyres, I wonder? Fabio Scherer on our timing screen is dropping in the middle sector. There is Tincton ahead of Schwarzman. He's done it. So he's gained one place at the expense of Schwarzman. He'll gain another because of the problems now for Fabio Scherer. So that suddenly puts Tincton up into 8th place, but Marcus Armstrong is up into 5th. Tincton under attack from Schwarzman, who tries to fight back at the end of Vale, but Tincton stays ahead, elbows out, keeps him at bay. I'm keeping an eye somewhere for Fabio Scherer's progress. He's in that middle sector and has stopped, I think, somewhere in the middle part of the lap. There is Tincton over the timing line. Schwarzman has not given up. He tries to fight back on the outside, but he runs out of road over the curb, so Tincton hangs on to 8th place. Now they are about to come to the end in Wellington Straight of that first sector, and then let's try and find where Fabio Scherer's car is. There should be a yellow flag somewhere to tell us of its demise. Fabio Scherer out of the race. Is it a puncture? Is it mechanical? We saw him lose out to Yuri Vips, and then the car has come to a halt somewhere in this middle sector. So out of Brooklands into Luffield goes Dan Tincton, who in the space of a lap has gained 2 places. The leader is down at Copse Corner. The lead gap still 1.8 seconds. Schumacher to Vips. Yuri Vips, by the way, the leading rookie. And where in all of this is Fabio Scherer's car? It is stationary and out of the race. So the race leaders come to the Beckett's S's once more through that right, left, right sequence. Mick Schumacher is on lap 17 and he's 1.6 seconds clear. Schumacher has also done the fastest lap of the race, and Robert Schwarzman goes through. To Hanger Straight comes Tincton, and this tells us perhaps what happened to Fabio Scherer. So off the road coming out of the Beckett's S's. He'd already lost a lot of places there, hadn't he? So maybe it was a mechanical problem or a puncture, and electing to park the car way off the road. Either way, Scherer is out. A race that promised so much from pole position has come to naught. Dan Tincton closing on Sasha Fenestra. He's just under 6/10 back as you look at Schumacher, who's going to have this lap and one more before the checkered flag now. Comes out of the loop into Aintree. Speed building all the time now as the cars accelerate yet again onto Wellington Straight. The lead gap is down by a Nats Cropchin here. It's down to 1.6 seconds, but Vips not close enough to really attack. So it'll be another good run for Yuri Vips, a race winner this season from the Norris Ring, but he's not going to be able to challenge Schumacher unless the leader has a problem, I wouldn't have thought. The clock will hit 0 shortly, and that's Nikita Troitsky out of the race now. That looks like it could be coming out of Village. Is that left rear a bit low? It's a big lock-up. It is, it's a flat tyre. It's another car with a left rear deflation. So the list of tyres going down is increasing, and intriguingly, it's a different team in this race having the problem. So there, Fenestra and Tincton go down towards Copse Corner. This is the fight for 7th. Winners both this season. Dan Tincton, we know he can get past Sasha Fenestra. He did it for his 4th win of the season earlier on in the day, and Sasha Fenestra will be very, very keen to stick his elbows out in this race and make sure that the British driver cannot find a way past him. Tincton onto Hanger Straight. There'll be one more lap to run at the end of this. In the background, look behind, you'll see Schwarzman 9th and Ralph Aaron almost up with him for 10th place. Is Tincton close enough to have a go? thinks about it, but Fenestra covers the line nice and early this time. Both of them wide off the road, and Dan Ticktum there's going to get the inside line for the end of Vale. Is he going to go through? Yes, he is. Dan Ticktum goes through. Now, you could argue that was certainly track limit abuse, because by running off the road, he got the advantage. He had the momentum, and he had the inside line all the way down to the next corner. I wonder whether that might be looked at. Through they come, over the line, onto the last lap now. There's a yellow flag, or briefly there was a yellow flag at turns 3 and 4. That was for Nikita Troitsky. That's the area of the circuit they're heading up to now for the last time, but the yellows have gone in. As Schumacher leads Vips, the gap is down to 1.5 seconds. There is Ticktum. And Nikita Troitsky's car out of harm's way. So for the last time in this 17th round of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship, the drivers go through onto Wellington Straight. And Schumacher it is who leads, and the gap has just crept up slightly to 1.6 seconds now. There is Mick Schumacher, and this has been a mighty impressive drive for Rennie Rossit's Prema Theodore Racing Squad. He's heading for a second victory of the season. Schumacher then ahead of Vips, and Jonathan Aberdeen looking as though he is finally going to score a podium for the first time this season. He'll be delighted with that. Yuri Vips, Jonathan Aberdeen, Inam Ahmed, the top 3 rookies. But Mick Schumacher for Prema Theodore Racing has driven superbly in this. He made an absolutely lightning start. He has controlled the pace. Now look, the gap has come down because 0.5 second he's pulled back in the middle sector alone. Yuri Vips much closer, but he's going to be able to get near enough to challenge. My suspicion is the answer is going to be no, but let's see. Down to the end of Vale, Schumacher has only got to get it safely into club corner, and then the checkered flag awaits. Out of Vale, into club, Vips isn't close enough, and so for the second time this season, Mick Schumacher will win in the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. Yuri Vips takes second, throwing everything at it on the last lap. Third, finally a podium for Jonathan Aberdeen, and fourth, right with him at the end, Inam Ahmed. Lots of applause at Prema Theodore Racing, as fifth goes to Marcus Armstrong ahead of Guan Yu Zhou. Dan Ticktum gets 7th, having been 12th early on. Fenestra 8th, Schwarzman 9th, 10th Ralph Aaron. Again, Dan Ticktum proving that you can overtake in Formula 3. Okay, he was helped a little bit by 1 or 2 people having problems, but that was another properly attacking drive. So Mick Schumacher wins by 1 second from Yuri Vips. Jonathan Aberdeen taking 3rd. Inam Ahmed is 4th ahead of Marcus Armstrong, and Guan Yu Zhou 6th. It's Dan Ticktum 7th, Sasha Fenestra 8th, 9th is Robert Schwarzman, and Ralph Aaron salvaging just 1 point. And there, the frustration must creep in for a driver having struggled to make progress, seeing Dan Ticktum arrive behind you, catch you, pass you, pull away, and then gain more places. And Ralph Aaron and indeed Prema must be thinking, well, why could he do that and we couldn't? And Aaron has just not looked racy all weekend, whether it's been in free practice, qualifying, or these first 2 of the 3 races that we've now witnessed. There's something seemingly amiss with Ralph Aaron's car this weekend. But Mick Schumacher it is who scores victory at the home of British Motor Racing. The cars now make their way down into the support race pits, the heritage pits, and the drivers will use the podium that is there in front of the Jimmy Brown Centre, named after the former long-serving managing director of Silverstone Circuits Limited. There is an incident involving Ticktum and Aaron. Contact, that was the one at club. There's an incident, yes, Ticktum and Fenestra under investigation for track limits. That was the one we saw coming out of Stowe, which I raised at the time, that might not have been strictly kosher, so the officials are going to have a look at that as well. There in the technical area, the car's put into parc fermé conditions. The drivers now will clamber free and make their way up to the podium. But a great drive by Mick Schumacher, faultless from lights to flag, his 2nd victory of the season. So there, Mick Schumacher makes his way to the scales. There's a regulation weight that car and driver has. Let's have a look at how the race unfolded, as you see a replay of the start, with Schumacher making that very good getaway to fend off the Motor Park twins on the inside line, just squeezing by to take second place. Fabio Scherer, Juri Vips busy defending, and that just cost him for the first, two-thirds of the race, really. Dan Tickton was on a mission trying to find a way up past Alex Palou, who lost out to Ralph Aram. At this point of the race for Tickton, we didn't look all that prepossessing, only in 12th place, but eventually he was able to speed up, eventually he was able to get faster, and eventually he was able to wriggle his way through the traffic. And once clear of cars, he wasn't running in dirty air, so Tickton got faster and faster. Jane Deruvula was busy squabbling lower down the order. First of all, he had to contend with Marino Sato. Those two ran side by side through the loop. Sato forced out wide onto the curb. Tickton got himself up past Ralph Aron on the outside at club. Contact between them, that's being looked at by the officials, but I think that was just, to be fair, a racing incident as the two cars were going for the same piece of tarmac. Lower down the order, Marino Sato wriggled his way up past the car of Kevin Andres, coming to the end of Vale. Went through on the inside line, took the place. Dan Tickton then onto the back of Sasha Fenestra. Now look at this, he ran out wide, and therefore because he was on the wrong line, the outside line all the way around Stowe and off the road, he had the inside for the end of Vale and was quickly able to get the place, and that also is being looked at by the officials, and that might have more of a case to answer than the contact with Ralph Aron, because clearly that line helped him for the next corner to gain a place. But Mick Schumacher won at Spa, Mick Schumacher wins at Silverstone. Schumacher taking win number 2 of the season. It's another victory for Prema Theodore Racing, and an excellent job done by Mick Schumacher to win. Mick Schumacher winning by 1 second from Juri Vips, with Jonathan Aberdeen taking third, his first podium of the year. Inam Ahmed, the best Brit, 4th ahead of Marcus Armstrong, in 5th ahead of Guan Yu Zhou, and then Dan Tickton up to 7th ahead of Sasha Fenestra, Robert Schwarzman and Ralph Aron in 10th place. 11th Alex Palou from Ben Hingley and Ferdinand Habsburg. Sebastian Fernandez 14th, with Jane Deruvula next ahead of Artem Petrov, Marino Sato, then Kevin Andres, Sofia Flörsch and Petru Florescu in 20th. Amaya Vaidyanathan 21st, and Charles Leong, the only other finisher. We lost Nikita Troitsky and we lost Fabio Scherer as well. So it has been another impressive drive by Mick Schumacher, another impressive drive also, you've got to say, by Dan Tickton to work his way into contention, into the mix. And so race 3 tomorrow morning is going to be another fascinating 33 minutes plus 1 lap. It will start at 10 local time. We'll be on air at 5 to 10 local time. It is now just after 2 o'clock if you want to work out, wherever you're watching, what UK time is like this time of year. The podium awaits for the winning drivers. Mick Schumacher is the man on the top step of the podium here at Silverstone at the end of round 17 of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship, where he's going to be joined by Juri Vips for second place, and for the first time in his Formula 3 career, Jonathan Aberdeen. So race 3 tomorrow morning promises to be another fascinating race. Join us for that if you can. Thanks for your company today. For now, from Silverstone and David Addison, it's well done, Mick Schumacher, and bye-bye.